Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. All right, I am live. Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly illuminations. I'm just going to wait a few seconds here for people to hop on, and then I'm going to get started. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope everybody is having an amazing Friday. I know I am. It's really sunny out here and the birds are chirping, and this has been a great week. So, if you're just hopping on, let me know that you're here. Say hi so I can tune into your energy. Whew. Um, this week has been really expansive. Hi, Valeria. And let me know if you guys agree. Hi, Shannon. Happy Friday. So, yeah, this week has been super expansive. I've had a lot of new clients starting, and everyone is starting with the Metamorphosis, who I'm working with, and they are starting the first week, which is around your birth story, which is why you probably heard me talking about this a little bit this week. I did a post about it earlier in the week, but I really wanted to talk about this today because it's such a powerful concept and can be such an important piece of the puzzle, so to speak, that a lot of us overlook it, right? Because not a lot of people talk about it. I know there's like people out there who do, but I think it's something that can be easily overlooked, yet it is so powerful and so important. So I wanted to talk about it today. So, basically, what happened is this week I had a client reach out to me who just started the Metamorphosis and started to delve into her birth story and had all these amazing understandings, aha moments, and really understood like this really big piece of the puzzle. Because, when we are going through High Tao, you guys know Valeria and Tal have done the Metamorphosis, so they know all about this. So, the first week in the Metamorphosis, we start with uncovering your birth story. And I want to talk about what is your birth story, right? Because this can sound like a really like out there concept, but your birth story is basically the energy that was present from your conception all the way up to when you were born and the months following. Okay, so basically looking at what were the energies between your parents when you were conceived? Like, were you planned? Were you not planned? And were your parents like in love, or did they barely know each other? Like, what was the energy there? And then also, what was the energy during your mother's pregnancy, right? Like, what was going on in the world, what was going on in her life, like really looking at all of those energies because you literally are developing in that environment during that time, and you are building your cellular memory based on these energies that are present during that time. So when you think about it, these energies actually serve as the building blocks for your being. So it's kind of wild to think about, right? Because whatever was happening during that time is literally holding an energetic signature in your cells and can be affecting the way that you look at the world, the way you perceive things, and even just like an undercurrent of anxiety or fear that you may feel that could be because of those circumstances. So it's not only, what happened while your mother was pregnant with you, but then also the actual birth. So, because the actual birth was your first experience of the world. So, depending on what happened in your actual birth, like if your mother was really heavily drugged and you had the effects of the drugs, or if you were a C-section, or if there was some kind of emergency during your birth, like maybe they didn't think you were going to live, or you had the cord around your neck, or some kind of emergency like that. Hi, Easter. Um, that can also affect your the way you perceive the world, right? Because that was your first experience of the world. So, all of these things are really, really important to take into consideration. And then the other thing that's really important to take into consideration is actually what happened in those first few months after you were born, right? Because I've had some clients recently who've uncovered that they had the experience of feeling neglected because they were born very close to the sibling that was born before them. So maybe their sibling was only a year old when they were born, so their mother really didn't have the time or space to give them the love and care that they needed. So they actually feel neglected in some way or lacking touch or lacking nurturing, right? So these are all really important things to look at. Or maybe you had a mother who couldn't be present because they had to go right back to work, right? So you felt like you weren't getting love and attention from your mother. Also, sometimes if you had parents who left you in the crib to cry, right, and you actually had this experience of feeling like you were completely disconnected and neglected and you might die because you didn't know if somebody was coming to get you, right? I know it sounds like morbid, but this is actually the things that we need to take into consideration when we look at this very early time. Because the other thing that's important to remember too is that all of these experiences that you had were nonverbal. So they were these very visceral, physiological experiences that actually just live in your body. And there might be this, like I said, this undercurrent of anxiety or undercurrent of feeling unsafe. So these are all really, really important things to take into consideration when you're looking at the birth story, okay? So I'm just going to give you an example now of my own birth story and how it affected me, and then maybe it'll help you draw some parallels with things that you know of that happened to you. And the other thing I want to say about this is it's okay if you don't know, right? Like I know some people, their parents have passed away, or also the other thing is like sometimes your parents don't always remember it that well either. Like maybe like your dad will say one thing and your mom will say another thing, like, so you don't need to always like go ask your parents. You can also just like tune into your own intuition and your own inner knowing and ask to be shown the pieces of it that are important for you at this time for healing and transformation, right? So maybe it's just like this undercurrent of anxiety, which I know a lot of us have because our parents or our mother had it while we were in the womb, or maybe there was something going on where our mother didn't feel safe, or maybe we were born into a situation where we could tell it wasn't safe. So there's like this undercurrent of fear and anxiety, right? It's like a low grade fear and anxiety that's actually like a physiological feeling. It's not like a thought, if that makes sense. Um, and again, let me know if this is making sense, and let me know if you guys have questions or if you have any ahas that are coming through. Okay, so that's really important to think about. The other thing that is really important to think about is how this story then affects your life, right? So there's so many different ways it can happen. Like that story I just told you about a client who said that they felt um, like they didn't get enough nurturing from their mother because they had a sibling that was very close in age, so their mother couldn't give them enough nurturing and touch. So this person literally said in a breathwork session that they experienced feeling completely neglected and just like they needed to be held, right? And this is something that can come up when you start uncovering this stuff and doing the breath work. You'll actually uncover this feeling of like, oh, I just really need to be held and nurtured. But then how that can show up in your life is that maybe it's really hard for you to get into intimate relationships because you don't trust it, because you didn't receive that nurturing care in the very beginning. So you don't have a context for it and you're not sure how to receive it because you didn't receive it of your life. So the decisions you made about the world, or that maybe that kind of thing doesn't exist, or that the world is a scary place, and then you play those feelings out in all of your relationships. I know this is like a lot and it's deep stuff, but this is the stuff that the birth story will bring up. So I'm just going to share mine, and hopefully that'll help you maybe draw some parallels or understand why this is such a big deal. So for me, there's a few things. And it's funny, I just want to mention that I started, many of you know, I started learning and studying breath work at a young age. I was 19 years old, and the birth story is one of the first things I learned about. And it didn't really connect for me at that time. Like, I didn't really have any real experiences of remembering anything about my birth or making that many connections. But then when I was pregnant with my son, who's my oldest, he's about to turn 7, I was doing breathwork sessions. I did a series of breathwork sessions with a breath worker. And during that time, when I was pregnant, I had all of these memories and awarenesses around my birth and my mother's trauma and all of this stuff. And I had all of these understandings about how that affected me, and I was able to release it. But it was just very interesting because I didn't have these awarenesses, and the stuff didn't come up for me until I was pregnant. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. So I just want to say also, sometimes people who go through the metamorphosis, they may not right away draw these connections, or they may not have this stuff come up right away, or maybe some stuff will come up, but then later on down the line, you'll uncover more. So it's always like an ongoing process. And that's why I give you the tools that you have for life so you can continue to use them over and over again, because new things will always surface when you're ready for them to surface, right? So Valeria is saying, thinking of my son and how anxious I was, can we clear their birth story? Of course. We can clear anything. But the other thing, and this is the other thing I always tell other moms, is always also remembering that, like, it's all perfect because your kids chose you for a reason, and whatever experience they were supposed to have in coming through you is exactly what they were supposed to have. So, and I completely relate to you, Valeria, because when I was pregnant with my son, we actually had a fire. We were supposed to move into this house in January, the house we're in now, and my husband accidentally started a fire in the house, and the house like completely burnt, and then we had to get it rebuilt. And during that time I was pregnant, and it was like a very traumatic thing, and it was very upsetting, and I was very worried about how that would affect my son. And he's fine, obviously. So it's all good. But the point is that all of those things are okay, right? Like, even, and I know there's so many people who are anxious, and we all get anxious when we're pregnant, right? Like, there's always that worry of like, what if something goes wrong, all of these things. And our kids are okay. But yes, we can definitely do energy work to clear it. And Valeria, you are more than capable of doing that, so I'm sure you'll know exactly what to do, and you can clear it for yourself and for him. Hi, Nat. Shannon says, wow, this is incredible to think about. It is. It's a whole other layer and dimension. Okay, so when I was pregnant with my son, I had all of this stuff come up around my birth and the time I spent in my mother's womb. So I'm sure you've now heard me talk about my mother. I talked about her last week. I love her. She's an amazing person. She's one of the kindest people on the planet. She's also has trauma, and she's also very nervous and neurotic. So I actually had these like visceral memories of being in her womb, and it being like not a very calming place to be, right? Because she had this undercurrent of anxiety and neurosis all the time. So I actually had these experiences in breath work where I was able to remember the experience of being in the womb. And this actually happens with a lot of people when they do breath work, because um, it can take you back to these first memories of being in the womb, or even the memory of taking your first breath. These are very real things that happen, because these are experiences that are actually living in the cells. They're living in your DNA. And when you get the air moving in the body, they just rise to the surface, right? Um, so you can have these experiences, right? So I had that experience, and then just to tell you a little bit more, um, sorry, my nose is itchy. um, so my parents were both teachers, and in 1981, the year I was born, my parents were on strike. There was a huge teacher strike here in Philadelphia. I think it was actually the longest teacher strike that there ever was. I think it was like 4 months the teachers were on strike. So my parents were both teachers. My mom was pregnant with me, and they were on strike, which meant they didn't get paid. So my parents had no money. They were making no money, and my mom was about to have me. I was born in November, and the strike happened like in the summer, and then they never went back to work in September. So my parents weren't working for like September, October, and November, and like teachers don't make that much anyway. So that was a long time to not be making money. So they literally had no money. So the circumstances that I was born into is that my parents had no money, and there was a lot of uncertainty and fear around money and how things were going to work out. There was a lot of uncertainty. So you better believe that affected my money story. Because I always had such a hard time with money. I had a hard time. I could always make money. I had a hard time holding on to it. I had a hard time managing it. I always spent more than I had, right? Like I was a mess always until recently. So this really, really affected me, not only financially, but also just feeling safe and secure. So this was kind of like this underlying energy that I was born into. So I always had this undercurrent of feeling anxiety, feeling unsafe, and I overcompensated for that in a lot of different ways. But to understand that that was kind of this undercurrent, this energy that I was born into, was really, really profound, because I was able to shift that, and I was able to really move through that energy and transmute it so that I could start to create a life where I felt safe and secure. And that's not a process that happens overnight, right? It's an ongoing evolution of continuing to do the work and use the tools that I have to shift and transmute that energy. But it's really shifted. So I say that to say that you can shift this stuff. It's totally possible, and it doesn't have to take a long time. But it's really important to understand these subtle energies that affect you, especially when you first come into the world. So I want to say, like, the details, the smaller details are not always as important as just like the energy behind it, right? So, like, yes, it's important, this whole story about my parents being on strike and all of this stuff, but what's really important is the underlying energy behind it, which was that of fear and uncertainty, right? And I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to that and might have been born into similar circumstances, maybe for different reasons, right? That's just one example of how the circumstances around your birth can affect you, but I guarantee you they did affect you. It's just a matter of how, and it's just a matter of allowing yourself the time and the space to explore that. And it really is a foundational thing when understanding like how you operate and how you see the world. And this will also come up at the beginning of things for you. So if you are starting a new job, if you're starting a new project, if you are having your own child, if you are getting married, like any like beginnings of big things, this energy will really come up for you. So it's important also to be aware of that so that you know what's happening when this energy comes up. Another thing that's really interesting that I feel like mentioning now is the energy around C-sections. So typically with C-section babies, they actually have trouble like seeing things through or going through things all the way to the end. So they may actually like skip to the end, or they may not finish things, which is a huge theme with C-section babies. My husband was actually a C-section, and he has a really hard time with that. Like yeah, I won't even give you examples. I feel like he's listening to me. He's gonna be mad at me. But anyway, he is an example of how C-section babies have a hard time with like seeing things through to the end, because they actually didn't go through the birth canal. They just got pulled right out, so they kind of skipped that process. So it's little things like that that are super interesting, that are really important to take a look at, because it's very foundational. So once you actually clear a lot of that stuff, it kind of, everything else kind of gets figured out, right? Because you cleared this very foundational thing. So I'm just going to check the comments. Hi, Nat. Nat says, I relate so much to you on mother's neurosis and anxiety. Oh, yeah. Emma says, Elise, your mom and my mom have remarkable similarities. Oh, I could have told you that, Emma. Just because you and I get along so well, I could tell. It's fascinating about a C-section. Oh, Nat says she was having a major epiphany on the C-section. Oh, yeah, that's a huge one. Oh, Lindsay says, what about preemies? Okay, so I was actually, I don't know if I would be considered a preemie. I was born 4 weeks early, so I was really small. I wasn't in an incubator though. But for preemies, obviously you need to explore what that is for you, but like typical things could be feeling like you're not capable, or like you're not going to make it, or that there's something wrong with you, or you probably always show up to things early. I know for me, I'm always early, or like just right on time, or a little bit early. That's a typical characteristic for preemies too. But also, like, I just want to say, like, with all of this stuff, it affects everyone differently based on like who you are and how you perceive the world. So it's really important to just explore what that means for you. So, there's no like hard and fast rules for this. It's really just to start exploring it. You can definitely start out with using my breathwork session that I have in the guide section to start kind of going deep and exploring that within your own subconscious. And then obviously, working with me, especially in the metamorphosis, is a great way to explore this stuff, because once you kind of clear this stuff, it makes it a lot. Sorry, that's like so loud. Once you clear this stuff, it makes it so much easier for everything else to kind of get into alignment, because this is like this very foundational thing. So when this energy is cleared, everything just becomes a lot easier, whether you're trying to create something new, or even if you're doing other healing work, the other healing work will really start to stick better once you clear this foundational stuff. And that's really what I feel passionately about doing with people. Valeria said that would explain my son always being late. Totally. Yeah. It's interesting. Both of my kids were born late as well. They were actually both born at the exact same, they had the exact same gestation period, 41 weeks and 1 day. They both were born at that time. So I guess I have a very like clear gestation period of my body. I was always interested, if I had a third kid, if it would be 41 weeks in 1 day, although I am not having one. So, but yeah, it's kind of funny. So yeah, so these are all really awesome, interesting things to consider and look at. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope I gave you guys some things to think about. And if this is something you'd like to explore further, definitely reach out to me and we can talk about the best way to do that. But that is all I have for today, and I can't wait to connect with you guys more. Thank you so much for being here. and I will talk to you soon. Bye.